Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Iran's former president MahmoudAhmadinejad says US sanctions on Tehran are ugly and immoral. In an exclusive interview with Indus News, the Iranian politician said differences between Washington and Tehran can be resolved through respect and justice. Ahmadinejad said he feels sorrow for the people in Indian-occupied Kashmir and hoped soon they will have chance to choose their future. He said, like other human values such as freedom, democracy and justice, the devilish powers have digressed the UN from its main mission. In Afghanistan's northern Baghlan province, at least 6 security personnel have been killed and 10 others wounded in a Taliban car bomb attack near a military base. The Taliban also claim to have destroyed a large number of tanks and other military equipment. In India, at least 11 people, including 8 children, have died after a residential building in Mumbai collapsed on top of another building. Police said the 3-story dilapidated building collapsed on late Wednesday following heavy monsoon rains. The WHO has warned that the highly transmissible COVID-19 variant first identified in India is poised to take hold in Europe. During a press briefing, WHO's Europe Director Hans Kluge said the variant has shown signs of being able to evade some vaccines. India, meanwhile, has hit a global record of over 6,000 deaths in a day after Bihar state raised its death toll following the discovery of thousands of unreported cases. Globally, there are more than 174 million infections. And in cricket, Karachi Kings are chasing a target of 177 runs against Multan Sultans in the 16th match of the Pakistan Super League that resumed in Abu Dhabi on Wednesday. Khushdil Shah remained the top scorer for Sultans with 44 runs. Lahore Qalandars will face Peshawar Zalmi later today. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. Iran's former president MahmoudAhmadinejad says US sanctions on Tehran are ugly and immoral. He said this during an exclusive interview with Indus News.
The Iranian politician said differences between Washington and Tehran can be resolved through respect and justice. Ahmadinejad said he feels sorrow for the people in Indian-occupied Kashmir and hoped soon they will have a chance to choose their future.
I always feel sorrow for the people of Kashmir. I hope that soon, with the recognition of the right to determine their own fate of the people of Kashmir, they get the chance to choose their future.
He also touched upon the Palestine issue and condemned the recent Israeli aggression that left more than 250 Palestinians dead.
We should go to the root cause of the problem. The root cause is the occupation of the people's land and also depriving them from their right to determine their faith, and also making millions of people refugees.
Commenting on United Nations' role in resolving international issues, he said the United Nations General Assembly should rule instead of the Security Council. He said, like other human values, such as freedom, democracy and justice, the devilish powers have digressed the UN from its main mission. He continued to say that Muslim countries' unity can give rise to a powerful bloc.
Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says peace in Afghanistan is vital for economic progress in the region. Talking to Chairman U.S. Foreign Affairs Committee Gregory Meeks via video link, Qureshi said Pakistan desires peace in the region, including Afghanistan. He said cooperation between Islamabad and Washington is crucial for peace in South Asia. Qureshi briefed Meeks about Pakistan's concern on rising Islamophobia in the world. He said the international community must take steps to prevent Islamophobia and ensure peaceful coexistence. For his part, Gregory Meeks lauded Pakistan's role in keeping peace in the region. He also expressed condolences over the killing of 4 members of a Pakistani origin family in Canada. In Afghanistan's northern Baghlan province, at least 6 security personnel have been killed and 10 others wounded in a Taliban car bomb attack near a military base. The military has confirmed the attack on the base located in the Bagh-e-Shamal area of the Pule Khumri city of the province. The military said the explosive-laden car was intercepted by the security forces before reaching its target. However, the Taliban also claim to have destroyed a large number of tanks and other military equipment in the attack. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson greeted US President Joe Biden in the English seaside resort of Carbis Bay ahead of the G7 summit. They will discuss transatlantic travel and a new Atlantic Charter aimed at refreshing the so-called special relationship. The president is also expected to tell Johnson the row between the UK and the EU over post-Brexit trading in Northern Ireland must not affect the peace process. The G7 Leaders Summit will begin on Friday and will focus on global coronavirus vaccinations and climate change. The UK is Biden's first stop on an 8-day trip to Europe. He will meet the Queen at Windsor Castle on Sunday. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has issued a directive to revive alliances and boost deterrence to counter China. The internal directive builds on the final recommendations from Pentagon's task force on China. In a statement, the Pentagon said the initiative aims to streamline cooperation with allies, particularly in Indo-Pacific. It said the efforts will accelerate the development of new operational concepts. However, the details of the initiatives, some of which are classified, are still unclear. The Biden administration's defense budget has called for shifting billions in spending to modernize the military to deter China. Beijing has repeatedly dismissed such actions by the US as hysterical, driven by a Cold War mentality. In the West Bank, the death toll from Israeli forces' attack on the Palestinian security officers has risen to 3. The Palestinian Ministry of Health said a critically wounded civilian succumbed to his injuries. The Israeli forces raided the town of Jenin city and opened fire on security personnel outside the Palestinian military intelligence headquarters. Palestine's President's office has warned that the killing of Palestinian officials is a dangerous escalation. In a statement, the presidency said the Israeli government will be responsible for the consequences of these actions. Israeli media says the occupying forces were conducting an operation to arrest 2 suspects, but the Palestinian Authority says the Israeli Defense Forces did not inform them about any such operation. An Israeli court has postponed hearing an appeal by Palestinians against the decision to forcefully expel their families from eastern Jerusalem. The families reside in the predominantly Palestinian neighborhood of Silvan on the outskirts of the old city of Jerusalem. Palestinians held a protest demonstration in front of the court against the decision to delay the hearing. Israeli occupation forces assaulted the protesters and arrested a young man. In northwestern Syria, shelling by government forces on the opposition-held Idlib enclave has killed 8 people. A war monitor and a volunteer humanitarian organization said the attack targeted Ibleen village in Idlib countryside. The Syria's civil defense said 11 others have been wounded in the attack. The attack was one of the deadliest since the March 2020 ceasefire, which was brokered by Russia and Turkey. In Iraq, multiple rockets have targeted two Iraqi military bases hosting US-led coalition troops. In a statement, Iraq's Joint Operations Command said no one was hurt in the rocket attack. It said 3 drones attacked a military base next to Baghdad's airport, but one was destroyed. Attacks on Iraqi bases have increased since the US assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad last year. Over a dozen rocket strikes have targeted bases in Baghdad's green zone since US President Joe Biden assumed office this year. In India's largest city of Mumbai, at least 11 people, including 8 children, have died after a residential building collapsed on top of another building. Officials said 17 people are injured while rescue workers are searching for survivors beneath the rubble. They added 9 members of a family are among those dead in the incident following the first downpour of the monsoon season. The police have registered a case of culpable homicide against the contractor of the building. Incidents of building collapses become more common in India's financial capital of Mumbai during the monsoon. The WHO has warned the highly transmissible COVID-19 variant first identified in India is poised to take hold in Europe. India has reported the world's highest 6,148 deaths from COVID-19 with more than 94,000 cases overnight.
India's massive jump in fatalities came after its eastern state of Bihar added around 4,000 at-home deaths that were previously unaccounted. Previously, the US had the highest single-day death toll with nearly 5,500 fatalities. Brazil is approaching 500,000 COVID-19 deaths after more than 2,700 people died and over 85,000 tested positive overnight. Meanwhile, as poorer nations struggle to fund inoculation drives, Pfizer has pledged to provide the US with 500 million COVID-19 vaccines to donate to the world. In Australia, locally transmitted cases continue to rise in Victoria State as its capital, Melbourne, prepares to come out of a 2-week hard lockdown. However, Canada has taken a cautious first step towards easing COVID-19 border restrictions for fully vaccinated citizens.
In Pakistan, 76 more people have died due to coronavirus over the past 24 hours. The health ministry says the country's death toll has reached 21,529. The ministry reported over 1,300 infections overnight, pushing the nationwide caseload above 937,000. There are currently more than 2,900 critical cases in the country, while over 871,000 people have recovered from the virus so far. The ministry said more than 41,000 tests were conducted in the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, Pakistan has made COVID-19 vaccination mandatory for employees of both private and government organizations. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has lauded Pakistan's army for anti-polio efforts. President Global Development Program Christopher Elias called on Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa and Rawalpindi. They discussed matters related to Pakistan's commitment to disease prevention. Elias appreciated Pakistan's successful COVID-19 pandemic campaign and Pakistan Army's tremendous contribution in containing transmission. Bajwa said polio eradication is a national cause and acknowledged the services of health workers. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Resuming our news bulletin from Somalia, the army has killed 19 Al-Shabaab militants after an operation in the southwestern Bay region. According to reports, both sides used heavy weaponry and fought for over an hour. Al-Shabaab fighters claimed that they briefly took control of a military base and killed 3 soldiers. The military has intensified its operations against the group as the country prepares to hold elections in the coming months. In the Central African Republic, Prime Minister Firmin Neguerbada has announced his government's resignation. In a tweet, the Premier said he has presented his resignation to President Faustin Archange Touadéra. But a presidential spokesman said he may be asked to stay and form a new government. Negribada is a former chief of staff to Touadéra and has been serving as Prime Minister since 2019. The US envoy to the UN has pushed for the Security Council to meet publicly on Ethiopia's restive Tigray region. Addressing a virtual event on Tigray, Linda Thomas-Greenfield said Ethiopia must respond to requests for humanitarian access. Meanwhile, a UN document says about 350,000 people in Tigray are in famine condition. It said that millions more across the region need urgent food to avert further slides towards famine. Earlier, the US said it is providing over $181 million to deliver aid to feed more than 3 million people in the region. Thousands have been killed since conflict erupted in Tigray last year, resulting in one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. In Russia, the anti-corruption group of jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny has vowed to continue its fight. This comes hours after a court in Moscow branded the Anti-Corruption Foundation extremist and ordered it to stop working. Prosecutors accuse the group members of plotting an uprising backed by the West. The group has published numerous investigations into the wealth of Russia's elite. The move will ban Navalny's allies from running in elections, further straining ties between the US and Russia. The Kremlin critic is serving a 2.5-year jail sentence for parole violations on an earlier embezzlement conviction. And now moving on, a Russian court has fined Facebook for over $200,000 for failing to delete banned content. It comes as part of a push by Moscow to rein in Western tech companies and beef up what it calls its internet sovereignty. In late May, the company was fined $353,000 on 8 separate counts for different offenses. Moscow has already fined the US internet giants Google and Twitter for similar reasons. Russia has also placed a punitive slowdown on Twitter for not deleting banned content. Israel says it has received a second batch of 4 newly acquired warships from Germany. The second SAR 6 corvette After getting the remaining 2 vessels later this year, the total number of warships deployed by Israeli Navy will reach 15. The warships will be helpful in carrying out missions in the Red Sea and the Gulf. The new combat ships will also help Israel protect its offshore natural gas fields close to Lebanon. The annular eclipse of the sun has begun and was witnessed by people in different countries around the world. The eclipse would be visible from parts of Russia, Greenland, and northern Canada and the US. But for Pakistanis, the phenomenon was not visible from anywhere in the country. A solar eclipse occurs when the moon passes between the earth and the sun, plunging the area where this happens into darkness. It happens only rarely in any given spot across the globe. The world's oldest cave painting is on the verge of decomposition. Experts are struggling to preserve the priceless prehistoric artwork in Indonesia. Details in this report.
Discovered in 2017, this painting in a limestone cave in Indonesia's island of Sulawesi is thought to be over 45,000 years old. The Pleistocene rock art depicting animals, hand stencils, and human-like figures appears to be the earliest known pictorial record of storytelling. But in recent years, experts found that ancient art is slowly being erased due to climate-induced salt efflorescence.
Mengambil beberapa sampel pigment.
We took some pigment samples and analyzed them in the lab. Finally, we came to the conclusion, as we already know through the published study, that the art is peeling off the wall because of climate change. It is accelerating the exfoliation of the cave surface.
Warming temperatures and the increasing severity of El Nino events have expedited the exfoliation process.
faktor kerusakan.
The biggest damage that we encounter on the field is the occurrence of peeling. The pigment that makes up the image on the cave wall is peeling off. The pigment is peeling from the wall. If we look at it in detail, it's not just the pigment that came off, but the stone surface where the pigment is attached to is also peeling off.
Almost 1.4 square centimeters of the painting had been peeled off from October 2018 to March 2019.
In England, a huge sculpture made out of scrap metal and electronics has been built on Cornwall Beach ahead of the G7 summit. Resembling the iconic Mount Rushmore, it features the heads of the G7 leaders. Details in this report.
As G7 leaders arrive in southern England this week, they will be greeted by a multi-story sculpture of their heads. Because of its close resemblance to Mount Rushmore in the United States, the artwork has been nicknamed Mount Recyclemore by its creators Joe Rush and Alex Wreckage. Made out of electronic waste, the sculpture aims to highlight the huge amount of tech and gadgets that go unrecycled each year.
What we've done here is we've depicted the 7 main characters of the G7 conference, with Boris Johnson on the left and Joe Biden on the far left. Yeah, on the far left, yeah. And basically it's to make them, to sort of say, you've got to work together on this one. You've got to build it into the way we do things, that we can recycle things, that we can repair things, and that we don't just waste things.
Music Magpie, the company that commissioned the unusual artwork, contributed most of the 20,000 items used in the sculpture. It runs an e-commerce website where people buy and sell second-hand electronic goods.
70% of the toxicity that goes into landfill comes from e-waste, and actually we're the UK's biggest mobile phone recycler at Music Magpie, and actually people don't know in that phone there's some really precious metals, so there's gold, there's silver, there's platinum, but there's some really also very nasty ones, so there's lead and there's mercury and there's even arsenic.
According to the United Nations, over 53 million tons of e-waste was generated worldwide in 2019. This was 9 million tons more than 5 years earlier.
It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Lows and the highs of the business world now. Pakistan has unveiled its economic survey, revealing that the industrial and the services sectors helped the country post GDP growth of nearly 4%. At a press conference, Finance Minister Shaukat Tareen said large-scale manufacturing expanded by 9%, helping the country surpass the initial target of 2.1%. The Finance Minister underscored the impact of the coronavirus pandemic in causing the economy to contract last year, but said the decisions of the government helped the economy stabilize, which resulted in improving performance on the growth front. According to the survey documents, the agriculture sector grew around 2.8%. The industrial sector registered a growth of 3.6% against a target of 0.1%, while services grew 4.4% against a target of 2.6%. The US and China have agreed to push forward trade and investment links. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo spoke to her Chinese counterpart Wang Wentao in the third round of the trade talks. China's Commerce Ministry said the two sides also agreed to handle their differences properly. In a statement, the ministry said both the leaders exchanged views frankly on relevant issues. They stressed the importance of the US-China dialogue and communication in business and trade. The ministry added Washington and Beijing agreed to maintain communication. El Salvador has become the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender. With 62 votes, lawmakers approved President Nayib Bukele's proposal to accept the cryptocurrency. Bukele says the use of Bitcoin will help Salvadorans living abroad to send remittances back home. Under the law, Bitcoin must be accepted by firms when offered as payment for goods and services. Its use as legal tender will begin in 90 days with the Bitcoin-dollar exchange rate set by the market. Cryptocurrency supporters hailed the move, but its impact on taxation or adoption in other countries remains to be seen. China has arrested more than 1,000 people suspected of using the profits from crime to buy cryptocurrencies. On its official WeChat account, the Ministry of Public Security said police busted more than 170 criminal groups involved in using cryptocurrencies to launder money. The groups converted illegal proceeds into virtual currencies via crypto exchanges. It added they charged their criminal client a commission of 1.5 to 5%. China's Bitcoin mines power nearly 80% of the global trade in cryptocurrencies, although trading is banned. The Wall Street stocks have risen as investors shrugged off an inflation report that showed a rise in price pressures. The Labor Department said the consumer prices for May accelerated at their fastest pace since the summer of 2008. The indices of S&P 500 and Dow Jones Industry traded nearly 0.5% higher, while the Nasdaq Composite Index was also up over 0.5%. Meanwhile, the oil prices surged a day after slipping on data indicating weak U.S. season fuel demand. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.